Welcome to this short and special episode of the Highly Sensitive Happily Married podcast with me, Hannah Brooks. This episode is super special because all it is a little quiz that you can take as you're going about your day, and it should just take a few minutes. This is officially episode 190, and it kind of goes hand in hand with episode 189. So I highly recommend going back to that one and listening to it after you take the quiz. So why do I want you to take this quiz? Because as highly sensitive people, and if I'm honest, as just a regular old human being on this planet in these modern times, our nervous systems are oftentimes dysregulated. And this has a major impact in a not so great way on our lives in general, and especially on our relationships. So it's super important when it comes to our relationships to understand if we have a nervous system that is dysregulated chronically or that tends to get easily dysregulated. And the maybe not so wonderful thing about being highly sensitive is this can happen even more easily for us than non-HSPs. Have you ever blanked out in the middle of a conflict with your partner so that you kind of forget the point you were trying to make or what you were trying to say? I've been there before in the past. Or have you said something to your spouse that you later wish you could take back because it was harsher than you meant, or maybe you didn't even really mean it at all? So those are just two simple examples that happen to many of us in our interactions with our spouse that are really coming from our survival reactionary brain and nervous system being in what I sometimes call SOS mode. In other words, our nervous system has gotten hijacked and we got really dysregulated in the moment. And of course, this can happen more easily when we're chronically dysregulated, but it can also just be a more momentary reaction where we fall into this dysregulated state. But it's much more likely to occur when there is underlying chronic dysregulation in our systems, like there are in most human beings at this point in time. But the thing is, like, if either of those things have happened, right, you said something kind of harsh or you didn't really mean it, or you forgot what you're trying to say, and so the conflict took a weird turn and maybe got even worse, oftentimes what happens is our relationship will take a hit from that, either momentarily or in a more long-term way. And there's a lot of other things that when we are dysregulated, when we go into one of these SOS modes, where we're reacting more strongly than we normally would, that is going to create much more drama, we might call it, much more intensity, much more struggle, much more suffering in our relationships, and a lot less clear, effective communication, a lot less getting through to each other and being able to really hear each other, a lot less open-heartedness and connection, and definitely a lot less of a feeling of like mutual supportiveness and being on the same team. So there really are many different ways that nervous system dysregulation can show up to the detriment of your relationship and to the detriment of your life in general. And you do want to know if it is happening for you so that you can make the necessary changes, because that's the really good news, is you have so much sway over your nervous system regulation or dysregulation. It just can take a little bit of learning and attention to it. But I like to think of our nervous system regulation as really the foundation of our emotional well-being and the foundation of our relationship well-being. It's foundational to that. We have a whacked out, dysregulated nervous system. There's no strong foundation on which to grow and maintain a great, loving relationship. It's like it's on a crumbling, weak foundation that will give out at any moment. So with no further ado, let's dive into the quiz. Are you at all dysregulated? So the way you're going to answer these 14 short questions is with one of three answers. Either often, occasionally, or hardly ever. Ideally, you do this with a piece of paper. So I'll say the number and you write down that number and then you write down your answer. Again, either often, occasionally, or hardly ever are the three options for answers. If you happen to be driving in a car or walking or something, you could probably do this by sort of counting on one hand to some degree your answers. might be a little bit harder to do that way. So I highly recommend doing this while you have a piece of paper in front of you. I do want to note that I have this in written form already on my website. I will put the direct link to that in the show notes or the description for this podcast. And it might be easier for you to just head over there and take it from that post. You can also just go to my website, hspmarriagecoaching.com, head to the blog and search in the blog area for mini quiz, and it will pull up this post. All right, here we go. Question number 1. How often do you get aggravated at your partner for no reason you can tell other than they're just there doing what they do? Remember, your answers are often, occasionally, or hardly ever. Pick one. Question 2. How often do you hear one insensitive comment from your spouse and either snap at him or shut right down, getting all cold and closed off, and then maybe also walk around for hours or days with a pit in your belly and chest that won't go away? Often, occasionally, or hardly ever? Number 3. How often do you feel bogged down by emotions like numbness, hopelessness, depression, disconnection, despair, or loneliness? And if I'm going too fast for you to answer these questions, totally just pause this to answer it and then unpause it to hear your next question. Number 5, how often do you feel overwhelmed, stressed, anxious, or frazzled in general? So just in general in your life, how often do you feel those things? 6, how often do you feel on edge, irritable, annoyed, or aggravated in general? So not just at your spouse, but kind of just in general. Number 7, how often do you snap at your partner or kids or say something out of anger or upset that you wish you could take back later? 8, how often do you blank out in the middle of a conflict, forgetting your train of thought? 9, how often do you have something you want to share with your partner, but you hold it in because you don't know if you could handle your partner's reaction if it wasn't a good one? Number 10, how often do bright lights or the sound of background music or loud noises really aggravate you? 11, are you easily startled? 12, how often are you easily irritated or stressed by small things that others don't notice, like clutter or the sound of your spouse chewing? Number 13, how often do you sleep poorly or wake up feeling unrested or still tired? And 14, how often do you have physical pain? All right, I want to add one more. I know I said there'd be 14, but hey, why not add one more? The 15th is, have you been diagnosed or do you have a suspicion that you have an autoimmune disease or IBS? Since that's kind of a yes or a no question, I want you to answer often for yes and hardly ever for no. I know that's a little bit weird, but the way we're going to tally the answers, that's going to be the only way it will work. All right, so here is how you figure out your score and interpret whether or not or how much your nervous system is likely dysregulated. Now, this is not a scientifically backed study, so I do want to say I try to put this together to be the most accurate it could be. It hasn't been run through a trial or anything like that, but I think it'll give you a pretty decent, accurate sense of whether and how much your nervous system is or isn't dysregulated. All right, so to figure out the score, tally how many offens or how many occasionallys and how many hardly evers you have. Okay, so do that first, count them up and write them down. So if you have even one often or 3 occasionallys, you likely have at least some dysregulation going on. And if you have any more than that, you definitely do. Now, granted, there are a few questions in here that most HSPs will say often to. So if you really want to get nitpicky about it, if for number 10 or 11 you answered often, I would invite you probably to interpret your results by if you have 2 offens or 4 occasionallys, then you likely have some dysregulation going on. I think if you answered hardly ever to all the other questions besides 10 and 11, we could safely say there's very little dysregulation going on for you. But I think the majority of listeners, pretty much everyone out there, will find that that's not how it's shaken out. So if in general you answered 1 or 2 offens or 3 or 4 occasionallys or any more offens and occasionallys, you do have dysregulation going on, either a bit or quite a bit. And I guarantee you it is taking a toll on your happiness in general in life, your sense of well-being, and on the connection, love, and ease and joy you're experiencing in your marriage. And I don't like to be the bearer of bad news, but I do think it's important to share this information. They're learning more and more that nervous system dysregulation, especially chronic, is the underlying cause for the majority of diseases. It actually leads to inflammation. And I don't know if you know this or not, but inflammation is one of the most common causes for all diseases. So one of the most underlying sources, at least, is this nervous system dysregulation. Your body was not meant to be dysregulated a lot. Every once in a while, it's supposed to go into an SOS mode, but it's not supposed to mostly stay there or be there often. And so those of us who have found that, maybe we are a little dysregulated or quite a bit dysregulated through taking this quiz, it's affecting your health as well and can lead to, autoimmune diseases and such, or just pain and such down the road. That's why I included those 2 questions about health. All right. I don't want you to worry, though, even though it does take a bit of learning and energy to turn dysregulation in the nervous system around. You can totally do it. And if you just want a simple starting place, definitely make sure you listen to last episode. That was 189, and check out episode 173 as well. But if you want to just get started with the best, most powerful, simple, and effective path to becoming regulated at that nervous system level, I highly, highly recommend joining this upcoming round of my live program, Foundations of Emotional Wellbeing for HSPs, the root of a better relationship. In it, I make emotional and nervous system regulation really simple, even really enjoyable, relaxing, nourishing, intriguing, sweet feeling, and peace infused for you to do. And at the time of this recording, this program is enrolling. It's a 5-week program. We meet 4 times live, and I'm actually supporting you all throughout those 5 weeks in a virtual group. I'm really available. This is different than some of my other courses that are a little bit more you're doing it on your own, and I occasionally do calls to help you answer questions. This one is really about going through this process together with me, really there for you, step by step, out the whole time. And I've made it this way because I think that this work is so foundational and important for us as highly sensitive people, and really for all humans, that I just really wanted to offer you lots of close support to make sure you get the very most out of it and you walk out of it with a nervous system that's really healing from dysregulation and will be on track to continue to stay regulated for your lifetime. So if you want to learn more about this and join us, you can check out the direct link in the description or the show notes of this podcast episode, or you can head over to hspmarriagecoaching.com and you can click on the courses tab and scroll down. You'll see that course, Foundations of Emotional Wellbeing, right there. Doors close for this round of this program on June 22nd, 2025. If you're hearing this podcast episode later, there should be a wait list, like a hop on the wait list button available for future rounds. So you can always hop on the wait list if you missed this round, but don't miss this round. All right, my friends, be oh so well.